ready to blast off. Today, we're diving deep, deep into NASA's next big leap, the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope.
Named for a true trailblazer, by the way. Nancy Grace Roman, one of the first women executives at NASA.
A fitting tribute, especially since this telescope is set to reveal so much that's been hidden from our view.
Launching in 2025, and it'll show us a view of the universe.
Well, imagine it's 100 times wider than what we can see with Hubble.
Wow, that's tough to even picture. It's like upgrading from, I don't know, a magnifying glass to the most powerful telescope you can imagine.
And it's not just about seeing more of space, right? It's about getting answers to some huge questions.
Exactly. Like, what is dark energy? What was happening in those very first moments of the universe?
We're hoping this telescope will bring those answers closer.
I can't wait. But before we get to those mind-blowing discoveries, there's a ton of work happening right here, right now on Earth.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what has us so fascinated today, the behind-the-scenes action. We've got reports, articles, all about this intense testing that's going on right now. And a lot of it's focused on one crucial piece of equipment, the outer barrel assembly.
The OBA, for short. And let me tell you, this thing's incredible.
I'm ready to hear all about it. First of all, what is it? What does it even look like?
Okay, so picture this. A giant, high-tech house on stilts. That's basically the OBA.
Okay, I kind of see it. So high-tech, definitely important, but what does it actually do?
Think of it as a super protective shell for the telescope's most delicate, most sensitive instruments.
Makes sense. This thing's got to survive a rocket launch, then keep everything safe and working for years in space.
It's no walk in the park, that's for sure. And it gets even more challenging when you think about the wild temperature swings out there. Hundreds of degrees difference between being in direct sunlight and then in the shadows.
Ouch. I don't think I'd do well with those kinds of temperature swings.
Neither would this telescope. And that's why this OBA is so vital. It's designed to keep the temperature incredibly stable no matter what. Even a tiny change, even a fraction of a degree, can really mess up the telescope's observations.
Like trying to take a steady picture with your hand shaking.
Perfect analogy. Only imagine trying to take that same picture, but you're in the middle of Times Square at night.
Talk about distractions. All those lights would make it impossible to see what you're really after.
Exactly. That's another thing the OBA does. It acts like a shield, blocking out stray light. Light from the sun, Earth, even other stars and stuff. It all creates noise, basically.
So the OBA is this multitasker, keeping things cool and dark.
You got it. That's how it makes sure the Roman telescope gets a crystal clear view, free from all that extra light. That's how it'll capture these incredible images from the depths of space.
We've got to make sure this OBA is up for the challenge, though. That's where the intense testing comes in.
Right, and you wouldn't believe some of the stuff they do to this thing.
Try me. I'm ready for it.
Has you ever heard of a centrifuge?
Isn't that like the spin cycle on a washing machine, but way more intense?
That's one way to put it. They basically strap this OBA onto a giant arm, this massive steel arm, and spin it up to get this 80 miles an hour.
Whoa. Are you sure it can handle that? It sounds terrifying.
That's the point. They're simulating the crazy forces of launch, the rocket blasts off. We're talking about 7 times stronger than Earth's gravity.
Okay, yeah, I'd want to make sure anything I was launching into space could handle that. But hold on, the OBA, it's a pretty big piece of equipment, right? They're spinning the whole thing at 80 miles an hour.
Good catch. They actually had to test it in parts.
Okay, that makes sense, but how do you even begin to?
Think back to our house on stilts image. They tested the stilts, the part called the elephant stand, that actually connects the telescope to the spacecraft. They tested that first. Then, they did the same thing with the house part, the protective shell.
Okay. I'm starting to get a sense of the complexity here, breaking it down piece by piece. But it's not just about brute force, right? It's got to be lightweight, too, if it's launching into space.
Every ounce counts when you're talking about space travel. So yeah, they use some seriously impressive materials.
Like what? What kind of stuff can handle that kind of pressure, but is still light enough to launch into orbit?
Carbon fiber, for one. Super strong, super light. And reinforced plastics, which sounds kind of ordinary, but this stuff is amazing. And, of course, titanium.
Titanium, like what they use in airplanes? And wait, isn't that really expensive?
Not when you need the best of the best. But there's even more to it than just the materials themselves.
Okay, now you got to tell me more. What else is going on?
Remember how I said to think of a house on stilts? Well, inside those walls, those panels of the OBA, they used a honeycomb pattern.
Wait, honeycomb? Like bees make?
It's exactly. Nature, the ultimate engineer. This pattern, it's insanely lightweight, that's so strong. That's why they use it in everything from aircraft to, well, spacecraft.
Yeah.
Reduces weight without sacrificing strength. It's brilliant, really.
Okay, honeycomb it is. Strong and lightweight. Gotta love that. But even with all that engineering brilliance, surviving that centrifuge is just the first step, right?
Yeah, we're just getting started. The next stop for this OBA is, you're not going to believe this, a test chamber that's basically a mini version of space right here on Earth.
Wait. They can actually recreate space. That seems like, I don't know, something out of Star Trek?
Not recreate, exactly, but we can get pretty darn close. It's called a thermal vacuum chamber. And it lets engineers expose the OBA to those brutal temperatures, the intense vacuum, all the things it'll face in orbit, but in a controlled setting.
So a giant space simulator. Sounds like my kind of place.
Pretty much. Inside this chamber, the OBA goes from crazy cold, we're talking hundreds of degrees below freezing, to the blistering heat of direct sunlight. And all of this while they're simulating the vacuum, the lack of air, you find in space.
Okay, now that sounds brutal. Why put the OBA through that kind of torture?
Because out in space, there's no room for air. Once the Roman telescope is up there, millions of miles away, we can't exactly send a repairman if something goes wrong, right?
Talk about pressure. But it's not just the OBA that needs to be ready for this cosmic obstacle course. What about the rest of the telescope? It's got to have other, sensitive parts.
You're telling me. Those solar panels, for example.
Oh, right, to power the whole thing. Can't forget about those.
Absolutely essential. But think about it. Those solar panels, they're going to be going from basking in the sun's heat to being plunged into the freezing shadows of the Earth.
Yeah.
Every single orbit.
That kind of temperature shock back and forth, that would fry my laptop. Forget about a delicate piece of equipment like that.
You think? That's why they use these incredibly resilient materials when they build these solar panels. Stuff that can handle those extreme shifts without falling apart.
Wow. It's kind of humbling, you know? We take all this for granted down here on Earth. A little too hot, a little too cold, no big deal. But up in space, totally different story.
You said it. And we haven't even talked about launch yet.
Oh, right. Blasting off into space, probably not the smoothest ride.
Let's just say it's one of the most intense parts of any space mission. The shaking, the rattling. It's enough to destroy something that's not built for it.
So how did they get this Roman telescope prepped for that kind of ride? What do they do? Strap it to a giant earthquake simulator or something?
Something like that. There's this thing called a shaker table, basically. This powerful piece of equipment that can recreate the exact vibrations the telescope will experience during launch.
So they shake the living daylights out of it to make sure it doesn't fall apart?
Well, it's a bit more scientific than that, but you've got the right idea. During these tests, they cover the telescope with sensors, hundreds of them, maybe even thousands. They're measuring every little stress, every strain, making sure nothing's pushed past its breaking point.
The ultimate stress test. But after the centrifuge, the thermal vacuum, the shaking, you'd think they'd let the poor thing have a coffee break, maybe a little vacation.
I think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But there's one final hurdle, and honestly, it might be the most crucial step of all. Ready for it.
Hit me with it. What could be more intense than everything we've heard about already?
It's integration.
Integration. Okay, confession time. That doesn't exactly sound as, dramatic as I was expecting.
Maybe not, but trust me, it's the grand finale, the culmination of everything. Think about it. They spend years designing, building all these separate pieces. The telescope itself, the instruments, those super resilient solar panels, the communication systems, everything gets tested, retested over and over.
Right. Each piece has to be perfect on its own.
Exactly. Like a team of all-stars, every single one at the top of their game. But here's the thing. They all have to work together, seamlessly. As one single, incredibly complex system, that's where integration comes in. And that's where things get really, really tricky.
Okay, I'm starting to see it. You could have the best players in the world, but that doesn't guarantee they'll play well as a team.
Now you're getting it. You could have the most advanced telescope ever built, but if the software isn't talking to the instruments, if the solar panels aren't powering the communication systems, game over.
So how do they coach this team? How do they make sure the Roman telescope is ready for the big leagues?
It's a long process. Painstaking. They assemble everything piece by piece, like a giant, incredibly high-stakes jigsaw puzzle. And at every single step, they're running tests, checking connections, making sure every single component is communicating perfectly, functioning exactly as it should.
Sounds nerve-wracking, to say the least.
Oh, it definitely is. Remember, this is millions of miles away. No tech support, no do-overs.
No pressure, right. So, to bring it back down to earth for our listeners, What makes this telescope, all this incredible effort, so worthwhile? Why should we care?
Because this is about more than just nuts and bolts and lines of code. This telescope, it's going to rewrite what we know about the universe.
How so?
We're talking about studying dark energy, dark matter, these mysterious forces that make up most of the cosmos.
And we have almost no clue about
That's
them.
one of the biggest mysteries in science. And the Roman telescope, it's designed to tackle that mystery head-on.
Incredible. Anything else? What about those planets we were talking about?
Oh, yeah, we're going to find thousands of new planets, I guarantee it. Maybe
Yeah.
even find some that could support life. And those stunning images, we're going to be able to peer back in time, see the universe as it was just a few 100 million years after the Big Bang.
Wow. It really does feel like opening a new window into the universe. And to think none of it would be possible without the incredible people behind it. The engineers, the scientists, everyone pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It's a testament to human curiosity, our drive to explore, to understand the universe and our place in it. And who knows what amazing discoveries await us.
I can't wait to find out. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the Roman Space Telescope. We've journeyed from the centrifuge to the thermal vacuum chamber, marveled at the honeycomb design, felt the pressure of integration, all thanks to the incredible work happening at NASA. But now we want to hear from you. What do you think the next big challenge in space exploration will be? What kind of extreme tests will we have to dream up to ensure the success of future missions? Let us know. Until next time, keep exploring.